Hello everyone, welcome to the ANCAD funding fair. Hopefully you're starting to come on. If you're coming on, welcome. Use the chat box to introduce yourselves if you'd wish to, just while we wait for everybody to come on. Give a couple of minutes to do that, but it's right on, it's just after 10:30, so we will get started. So kia ora, tō whalawa, ni hao, hello, happy St. Patrick's Day. Welcome everyone, my name is Stephanie Maitland, and on behalf of Auckland North Community and Development, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the annual funding fair. Really sorry we're unable to meet in person this year, hopefully next. We have over 200 people on the webinar today, so a complete cross-section of community organisations, schools and sports clubs, which is fantastic. But before we officially start, I'd like to ask Owen John to say a karakia.
Kia ora, me karakia tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E he aki ana te atukura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Ngā mihi.
Thank you. And before I share some housekeeping matters, Fiona Brennan, General Manager of ANCAD, will say a few words.
Tēnā koutou katoa, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Talofa. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all with us this morning. And I just want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day and your organisations to come to this webinar. As Stephanie mentioned, we have over 200 people joining us this morning for our first online webinar, I believe. In previous years, ANCAD has conducted the funding fair either in person or I think online before by Zoom meeting before, but this is our first webinar. So I hope that you find it a very interesting morning, and I hope it inspires you to go back to your organizations and think about your funding strategy and think about the resources that you can develop for your organization. We are so appreciative of the time that our panelists and presenters are taking out of their day to share their expertise and guidance with us. And I'm sure we're going to have a really interesting morning and learn a lot from this webinar. So I'm just going to hand back over to Stephanie in a moment. Before that, I just want to say a few words about ANCAD for those of you who may not know who ANCAD is. So ANCAD, or Auckland North Community and Development, is a community development organisation that has been supporting the Auckland North community since 1974. Our main role is to provide resilient, safer, connected communities. And as such, we are a leading social service enabler, which focuses on supporting and strengthening community agencies, groups and projects to deliver services for the Auckland North community and across the wider Auckland region. I could go on about ANCAD's diverse work and programs, but we'll save that for another day. Today, our focus is all around funding and enabling all of our organisations joining us this morning to get a new view about emerging trends, perspectives and priorities for the funding sector, and hearing directly from our very generous funders, some of whom I acknowledge are very loyal supporters of ANCAD's work, and we very much appreciate the support that they have given directly to ANCAD and to other community organisations across Auckland North. So thank you so much. Handing back to Stephanie now.
Thank you, Fiona. So just some housekeeping things. A copy of the slides will be emailed to you. This webinar is being recorded, and so information on how to watch it will also be sent. Each presenter will speak for 15 minutes. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box with their first name at the beginning so that we know who it's for, and all questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. In case you're not aware, ANCAD offers a wide range of education opportunities through its LIFT, L-I-I-F-T program, which was previously the 5 Good Ideas program. The upcoming workshops include Strategic Grant Writing, the 25th of March in Pakuranga, again on the 25th of August in Takapuna, Funding Options for Your Organisation, which is on the 18th of August via Zoom. There are many others. Please check the LIFT website, www.lift.nz for more details on the professional development program that's brought to you by the Tyndall Foundation. Another great ANCAD resource is their annual funding directory, which in the 2022 version is now available. Absolutely is something you need to have if you are applying to trusts and grants. You need a copy of this directory. So details on how to order are there on your screen, and also via the ANCAD website, www.ancad.org.nz. This is our program for today. As you can see, we've got some great speakers lined up for you, and with questions just after 12, wrapping up by 12:30. Anything there? Okay, now we're just going to do a quick poll. So hopefully this works. So are you responsible for preparing the funding applications for your organisation? So answer yes or no. So obviously the majority of you are, which is great to see. Thank you for responding. Got everybody, yeah. As you can see, there are quite a few of you responsible for funding applications, hence you wish to be, yeah, you'll need to be here today. Okay, so let's welcome our first speaker. It's my pleasure to welcome Michael, the Specialist Advisor at Auckland Council. Michael, over to you to talk about funding Council has available. Did you unmute yourself there, Michael?
Okay, is that, hang on. That's
Right.
coming through okay, Stephanie?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you. Over to you.
Hei loka, ngā mihi nui koutou katoa ti hui hui nei nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa. In my little island of Samoa, we say malo whalau, malo tau wā tai tupum te malik, malo lava soi fua malalangi mai. Hei talo whalawa, warm Pacific greetings to you all. And look, as you can see, it's no hidden. Happy to all our Irish and Pacific community. I've gone with both cultures this morning. So happy St. Paddy's Day to all of you here to our panel. I just want to firstly acknowledge the GM of ANCAD, Fiona Brennan. Welcome. Nice to see you again, Fiona. I want to acknowledge Simon Ritchie and the famous Stephanie Maitland from Maitland and Associates for putting this such a professional setup for our community this morning. Thank you too. I want to acknowledge our wonderful other community funders that are here today too on behalf of Council, you know, Generosity Generator, Foundation North Match, Perpetual Guardian Foundation, and DIA, Department of Internal Affairs. Nice to have our other funders, not just us. And most importantly, a welcome to all our over 200 community members and community groups that have dialed in this morning. Hopefully you'll take something away from our presentation this morning. Look, my name is Michael Alofa. I'm the Specialist Advisor for Council for the last 14 years. I belong to a department, or I work for a department in Council called Connected Communities. The department delivers the annual work program for the 21 local boards across Tamaki Makaurau. Each local board has one staff member in there called a strategic broker. The reason why I touch on that is because remember that title, because wherever you live across Tamaki Makaurau, that's the person you need to try and find and connect that will also link you, as well as me and other colleagues. But strategic broker is the go between the connected communities and those 21 local boards geographically wherever you live across Tamaki Makaurau. Hey, look, I also I work for another smaller team that's under the Connected Communities unit, and it's called Program Delivery Team. Now we're clustered across the four corners of Auckland or Tamaki Makaurau, and I serve the Northwest cluster, which encompass all of the Waitemata, which entails, as you see on the screen there, the local boards that I work for within that cluster that we serve is there are 5 local boards up in the north area, and there are 3 in the west. So our small team looks after that annual work programs for those 8 local boards. Just some background for our community members that have dialed in this morning. You may already know this. Auckland Council is operates out of a co-governance model. We have the mayor at the very top there, then followed by 20 councillors across all of Auckland. They govern what we call wards area. And within those wards boundaries, there are 21 local boards, which include Waiheke Island and Great Barrier. Then within the co-governance model of council, we have what we call CCO, in case you hear the abbreviation. It stands for Council Control Organisation. These are council organisations that look after the big commercial property operations of council, which is in the like of water care, regional facilities that manages Mount Smart and Western Springs and all those type of big properties or assets that are owned by council. As you can see just down the screen there, IMSB, Independent Māori Statutory Board, is an independent Māori board for our Māori community in the tangata whenua. So it's a standalone statutory board that feeds into council decisions and works alongside council to ensure all those directions on Māori are done. And then advisory panels, a Rainbow Community Panel, Pacific Panel, ethnic panels. Hey, look, this is taken last year, 2021. There's 1.7 of us across Auckland now, slight drop from 2020. 2018, as you can see, these are the stats across Auckland. European featured at 54%, our Asian community coming second at 28%, my people, our people, 16%, and our Māori community at 12%, and then the Middle Eastern, Latin American, and African is at 3%. So quite a diverse ethnic groups that makes up our cultures, diverse groups that makes up our Tamaki Makaurau. Hey, look, grant themes for considerations for our community groups that have dialed in this morning within council. These are the themes that we have within the organisations for your considerations that you may be focusing in your local community, that you want to drive your community group to either create an initiative or a community projects. Here they are, some that I've taken out that may be of relevance to our community members and groups that are dialing in this morning. Community initiatives, sports and recreations, art, events, environment, cultural initiatives, and heritage and waste. So we all dabble with these. So if your community groups are looking at applying for funding to council, make sure that you're specific about the area that you're wanting to drive your community project to. Because as you know, with 12,000 people in the organizations, you know, one application, so you need to tell us where, because it's going to go through 4 or 5 different departments before it reaches to the right people too. So it would help if you, before you start drafting up your community initiative, look at these themes of help. In the council funding opportunities, there's what we call, there is a Smarty grant process, there are category rather, and then there's contestable funding. And we also have a local board quick response funding for our local communities. And we also have a local board work programs. Now, every 21 local boards across Auckland has an annual work program that provides services to its local community. So if you're a local community group that wants to drive a a local initiative or a project that satisfies the environmental needs or community safety or garden in your area, maybe you need to give us a call through the strategic broker or ourselves, and we can connect you with the right category that fits in. But the local board work program is an annual process for us to advise the local boards and the local boards to serve its communities on an annual basis with a work program. For any reason, and I know you will be successful with a lot of the funding applications that you put through the many funders that are here before you this morning, just from a council perspective, and these are just the basic learnings that we've journeyed with our community groups over the years. Look, for any reason for us to consider, and for any reason you end up and you do become a successful recipient of a funding from council or the local board, we ask you just to consider, make sure that you've got these 6 areas in mind. It is very helpful for us that you're a legal entity, that you have legal entity status. It adds more weight than a non-legal entity around transacting ratepayers' money. For you to put through a funding application, just sit down and have a cup of tea and go and say why and what's the purpose of this community initiative. What really are you? Why are you applying for the money? Think about your objectives and your deliverables and timelines and the outcomes, because that's what we need to know as a funder and on this side of the fence reviewing to make sure that it's we're sending the funding to support the right objectives and the right outcomes for our community. When you're planning these community initiatives and you're putting the words on paper onto your application form, I want you to go and have wherever you live in Auckland, whichever geographical area, look and find which local board that you fall under or fall within. And I want you to go into their website, the Auckland Council website, and bring up the local board plan. There is always a 3-year local board plan because that's our elected term. Have a look at that local board plan where you're geographically applying for this funding and try and align your project to that local board plan outcomes. It helps that we're on the same page and we're both heading for the same goalpost. Now, accountability reporting is something that we're very firm on in council as well. So we'd like to account for every ratepayer cent that goes out, and we want to make sure that we give you the right support when we do hand out funding to our community groups. So there are templates that we do support our community groups that you can account for this funding back to us, whether it's in a 6-monthly period or whether it's a 12-monthly period. And that's why we're here as officers, to support you too, to make sure, along with ANCAD, to provide you some of the support of how you report this funding accountability back to us. Hey, and last, as you can see there, I think it's really important that we all build trust and relationship from wherever we go, really. So it's the same principle applies if you're applying for funding to us. It really helps to make contact, make time to go and have a latte, or make time to go and have a cup of tea with our council officer, or local board staff that you are wanting to engage with long term. And you want to build that relationship, because once you get over that hurdle of a trust and relationship, you'll find that your second year would be just a breeze over emails. So look, I've given you some lessons learned from over the years as we journeyed with all our community groups from then till now, and hopefully this basics from one funder as a presenter this morning will help you, takes away something. So good luck with coming to us later on. And just a couple of horrible snapshots from my little island of Samoa to end my presentation this morning. Thank you again, Stephanie and Simon and Fiona, for having me this morning. On behalf of Council and the 21 local board, ka mutu no iho, nā kōrero mō tēnei wānau reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Michael. That's great. I see there's a message from someone who's saying they've stayed there. So nice reminder. And hopefully now borders are reopening, we'll be able to go out and about and travel places. So that was great. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. Our next speaker is from Generosity Generator, which might be a funder that you might not be completely aware of. So welcome, Tim. We look forward to hearing from you.
Kia ora, thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Snowden te monga, ko Seven te awa, kare e taku marae he tangata tariti aho. Ko England, ko Scotland mea iwi, ko Yasmin tōku wahine toa, ko Hadika taku tamahine, ko Tim taku ingoa, no reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good to be with you, and thank you. I just mihi to Michael for a lovely presentation and setting the bar high. So thanks for setting us off with such a gentle, informative presentation. So I'm from the Funding Network New Zealand, that's the charity, and the programme I'm here to talk to you about this morning is our Generosity Generator. And from sausage sizzles to online fundraising, of course, not just sausage sizzlers, but we can all recognise that there's been huge disruption, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Traditionally, the Funding Network has been an in-person crowdfunding opportunity where 100 or so people are sat in a room ready and willing to donate. They hear from 3 charities. Charities exit stage right, Pledge Master General comes on centre stage, and in the next 30-45 minutes, each charity generally is helped to raise around $10,000–12,000. I took over the role just before the first lockdown when it was no longer possible to run in-person events. So I've never run one of those events myself. In the last year, though, we have through our successful transition and being cool like everybody is during lockdowns, we all pivot, don't we? We all like to talk about pivots, and I wanted to get in on the action. So we pivoted, and I'm here to talk to you about how that pivot evolved and what it looks like now. So we started off with the help from home because I was sat there like many people, I guess, up in Tamaki Makaurau, feeling pretty rubbish about the fact, yes, I could stay home, yes, I could do the things that Jacinda was asking me to do, but what else could I do? Because I felt quite fortunate. And so we started thinking, well, how do we enable people who are stuck at home from their sofas to make a difference to the charities who are doing the frontline kind of mahi? And we realised, of course, that those sausage sizzlers, those quizzes, those kind of traditional bucket shakes were no longer possible. And so we've always targeted small Kiwi charities of around 500,000, and we extended that to $1 million during this event, which is still 96% of the charities. I don't know, somebody on this panel is going to correct me if I pull stats out like that, aren't they? So I'll stay safe. But there's a ridiculous stat about the first 5 or 10%. The biggest charities get 90% of the funding in the country, and we're trying to disrupt that a little bit, I guess. What we started doing was just really our format, and we took it online, and 3 charities were pitch coached. They pitched on a Facebook Live event. We were very lucky, and I see Foundation North are on here, Perpetual Guardian and Vodafone stepped up in that first instance and provided match funding. And our first one in the middle of that first level 4 lockdown that seems a long time ago now, raised around 60,000. And what we realized, though, that there were some real gaps in how to fundraise online. Gaps like, oh, should I write to my trustees halfway through the program and ask for their help, or posts going up on Facebook that didn't include a donation link? And just stuff that, just because this was a new area, we felt as if we started to build in a little bit of training before the campaign rather than just pitch coaching. And we did so, and we began to see increasingly consistent results. And I think it was that consistency we were looking for, because as level 4 dropped off, we all know that kind of urgency of trusts and foundations to get money out of the door to support their communities became replaced by a much more strategic and focused approach. And so how do we consistently then reach into our communities deeper and wider to actually engage with the people who are there and want to support us where we work and in the work that we do, rather than relying on those funds and those trusts and foundations that were under increasing pressure. So in the 5 events that we held between that first lockdown and the end of last year, we helped 16 charities raise around $250,000, and that includes crowdfunding. So when you see this graphic on the right hand side, that doesn't include the match funding. That doesn't include the match funding that we raised offline through our partners. But there's always a but, isn't there? We got loads and loads of applications, and we were only able to help 3 charities at each event, and we did 1 event with 4. And so we were talking with Perpetual Guardian, and they said that there had been this huge spike in the number of new registrations, 1,800 new charitable registrations, August 2021, on top of a stat, I think, where Aotearoa has the highest number of charities per capita in the world, 28,000. So how do we start to address that need as people realize that the digital opportunity for fundraising in that digital online space is something that they need to incorporate into their fundraising strategy to diversify it and make them more resilient going forward. And so we started developing this help from home model into a much more deliberate capacity building focus. So whereas before we'd done a little bit of training, but our focus was helping people to fundraise, what we actually found was, oh, sorry, I was trying to do something clever then. I was trying to move it across onto my screen because I feel like I'm looking to my left at my second screen. What we found was that people weren't really understanding how to do this properly. So we launched the Generosity Generator, and we wanted to move, sorry, picking up my train of thought, we wanted to move from a fundraising organization that did a little bit of capacity building to really focusing on capacity building that people can put into practical use through an online crowdfunder at the end of our program. But that's really to embed the knowledge so that they can then continue to use that knowledge and build on that foundation in future years to grow their online crowdfunding capability going forward. So we launched it really quickly. The start of this year, we had our applications open for 2 weeks. We were hopeful of getting 30. We thought we might get 30. We got 54. We took 49 onto the program because we're not able to take on incorporated societies under our aims and objects. Apologies to any incorporated societies on the call. We now move it so that it's got 5 online training sessions. And I'm going to talk about those in detail in a minute. But essentially, this is how the structure runs. February recruitment. Then we went into our training program that we've just finished, and we run each training session twice. So we run an AM and an evening because we recognize that loads of you are doing this as volunteers. We then will be running from April the 1st to the 15th. We'll be running a 2-week online crowdfunding through our partnership with Give a Little. And we've got, I think, 46 charities that are currently signed up, and we're setting up their pages, and we will be launching that. And then after that, there'll be a debrief offered with each of the charities so that we can audit what went well, what didn't go so well. Where were the points of frustration, not just for us, but obviously for us, but also for those charities to understand, okay, next year, I'm going to do these things again because they worked, and I'm going to try and add on these couple of new approaches, because what you find is this platform that it gives you of moving your secondary supporters, those people who know about you but don't necessarily give, into your primary giving circle, and to identify that tertiary circle of people who have never heard of you, who have never given to you before. Try and bring them into your secondary circle. Okay, we know who they are. There's the profile that has been raised. Next year, we can move those people into our primary circle, and so forth and so forth. Crowdfunding is not only about the dollars. It's about the profile, it's about the awareness, it's about engaging volunteers, it's about letting the community know what you're doing, And it's about sowing the seeds. So if this is not a regular heartbeat, like once a year, well, that's not a very good heartbeat, is it? That would be pretty unhealthy. But once a year, we run a crowdfunder at this time. And during the rest of the year, our social media provides that heartbeat so that we're not just popping up once a year saying, give us your money. We're actually moving people through our story, helping them to see our impact, because it's about our impact and the community we serve. It's not about us. And then here's an opportunity to help us for the year ahead. And I think that's what I try and bring, or we try and bring to this, is we really believe that there's enough doom scrolling, right? We're sick of charities selling tickets to the Titanic, right? The world is ending. Climate change is going to kill us all. Give me your $20 and I'll try and sort it out. That's not motivating anybody. What's motivating people is we all want to live in a world where we have vibrant birdsong, where our young people, where our rangatahi feel connected, where we all feel as if we can contribute. However, here's some barriers. Our solution is. Okay, so that's what we are trying to encourage and train our charities and give them support to do, is how do we tell our stories in this way that moves away from this kind of doom and gloom, and we sell the misery to get the donations, because that is so 1980s Live Aid. So these are our 4 sessions: showing your story, not telling it, mapping your network, crowdfunding pro tips, and then the campaign calendar. And we've just finished these, and we had an average attendance of over the course of the 2 sessions around 65 to 70 people from those 46 organizations. We include people to bring their team, because otherwise that knowledge is lost if one person moves on. So let's make it more resilient. Around the side of that I've absolutely loved doing, but you should see my calendar at the moment, I'm offering each charity 30-minute one-to-one advice clinics, and I'm awful at keeping it to 30 minutes. So if you're good and you're a bit cheeky, you'll get more time than that. Give a little supporting with the setup and all of the bows and ribbons and bells and whistles and whatever the phrase is that go along with their platform. We are putting in an additional session because we've heard that need, which is around troubleshooting. So give a little social media and general crowdfunding people can jump on. We provide bucket loads of resources around and templates so that to make things easy for you. We're pushing out some PR around the generosity generator to try to just raise that tide, rise that tide for all of our boats. And then we have things, just a massive shout out to Fundraising Institute of New Zealand. They're giving us some incentives that our charities are pushing for through the programme as well. Some feedback that really just focus on the big one in the bottom. Really, I know the text is heavy, but you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint. Have a little look, particularly if you're considering if it's worth your time. There's a couple of charities on this call I've noticed, and if you want to chuck testimonials of your own, as long as they're nice ones, into the chat, please go ahead. And I guess this is the last bit really, is that's a bit whistle stop. We're currently in the middle of a program, so the timing is not perfect for you if you're really excited. However, sign up to our general social media, subscribe to our newsletter through our website. That's where we'll announce it. My feeling is that as soon as this campaign finishes, we will open up applications just to see. We don't know how regularly these should go. So part of that judgment will be, here's the applications, how many people are filling them in and how quickly. But we would expect to run at least one more by the end of the year for another 50 or so charities. And yeah, no reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Back to you, Stephanie.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that. It's great to hear you might be opening up another session by the end of the year. Any questions? Just remember to put them in the Q&A box. If for a particular speaker, just put their name prior at the beginning so they can check, make sure they go to the right people. So our next speaker is from Foundation North, a funder that many of us are aware of. Connie Lee is an engagement advisor with Foundation North. Welcome, Connie. You unmuted yourself there, Connie. Just need to unmute, and then your screen was shared, so that was you were good there.
Sorry, I've got 3 screens, so the mouse won't show. So let me try to share my screen again.
All good. Perfect.
Awesome. Kia ora everyone, my name's Connie. I am engagement advisor at Foundation North, like Stephanie mentioned. And I think before I start, I just want to give a shout out to ANCAD, Stephanie, and Simon for coordinating this event. It's great to see lots of different funders here today. I'm certainly learning a lot about other funders as well, and seeing the similarities between so far between Tim and Michael's presentation and what I'm going to present. So today I'm going to share a little bit about who Foundation North is, our funding strategy, and hopefully also provide you guys with a couple of application tips. So Foundation North, we established about 34 years ago from the sales of the ASB Bank to the Commonwealth. From the sales of the community shares, a putia was made, and that funding is then used to support the communities of Auckland, Northland for generations to come. On average, each year we grant around $35 to $45 million in grants. And I've been told that COVID has only briefly impacted our performance, and our returns continue to be really strong. So it's great we are able to continue to fund community to a similar level to we were. Foundation North, we are a values-driven organisation with a vision to enhance lives. We are a team of about 40 people, currently all working from home, but we do have an office based in Ponsonby. We've got some team members based in South Auckland as well as Northland. We are lucky enough to have access to a network of 20 associates from the Centre of Social Impact who also share our Ponsonby office. These are our 4 focus areas: increased equity, social inclusion, regenerative environment, and community support. And these 4 focus areas form our strategic plan. This has been 2 years. So 2 years ago, we had a strategy refresh. Foundation North recognised that we want to continue to be a strategic funder, and to do that, we need to be more intentional in the way we fund and how we fund. So the outcome of that is these 4 focus areas. Our strategy is a 15-year strategy with 3 yearly check-ins to ensure that we're kind of learning on the way and getting it right. I'll share a little bit more about these 4 slides or these 4 focus areas later on. Our funding framework is community. We've got 2 streams: community funding and impact funding. Majority of the organisations that come in fall under community funding, which includes quick response and community grants. Impact funding is a little bit new to the foundation, and we would like to fund initiatives that are looking to seed, scale, or provide systems change through what they're trying to do. The most important thing to notice about the slide is that centered around these 2 funding options is the 4 focus areas and the alignment to them. I'm just going to talk a little bit about eligibility, as this has changed a couple of years ago. So Foundation North, we fund organisations that can demonstrate charitable purpose. So you could be an incorporated society, you could be a charitable trust. Where we have broadened the eligibility is now if you're a limited liability company that can demonstrate that you've got charitable intent, that you possibly could come to Foundation North. Or if you are a new collective, you've not yet got your legal status, but your initiative does align to our focus areas, you might be able to come in under an umbrella. So it's always worth giving us a call just to double check whether your initiative is eligible or not. Secondly, you must be able to provide us with annual accounts. This means that your organisation, if you have been an organisation, must have been established for more than 12 months. And the program or service you're providing must benefit the communities of Auckland and Northland. And once you've checked the eligibility, I would highly encourage you to have a look on our funding exclusion and limitations checklist. Foundation North, we are a broad funder, and it's quite typical that in one application you'll see applicants apply for their operating grant, some program costs, or even some equipment costs. But in saying that, we do have a few things that we generally can't fund or that we have limitations on. An example of this is groups can only receive run grant every 12 months. So with our quick response funding, these are for applications up to 25,000. There's no closing date, and we aim to give you a decision within 2 months of receiving a complete application. What we've got here is the Weka Weka Valley Community Trust. They align to our focus area of community support based up in rural Northland. They identified that they actually don't have a community hub for the community to gather and to learn new skills. So this resource centre was, we funded them for operating costs, and they provide free workshops for their community to suit their community. Then we've got community grants. These are for applications over 25,000. There are also no closing date. Our board meets 6 times a year, and we aim to give you a decision within 5 months of a complete application. And in community grants, you can apply for multi-year requests as well. If you are applying for under 100,000, the team at the moment are streamlining their processes, so you may get a decision quicker than the 5 months. With both the quick response and the community grant, you'll notice that I've used the word here, complete application. What this means is that we need the application to be submitted, as well as the supporting documents to meet the criteria. And in this photo here, I've got one of our grantees, Kiwi Coast, based up also in Northland. They align to our focus area of regenerative environment. And here we've got the Manahiri releasing Kiwi to Tane Haki for key release. I'm now just going to touch on our 4 focus areas in a little bit more detail. There's no need to take notes of this. I've given our strategic plan to Stephanie, who will be able to provide this, and it's also available on our website. What I can tell you here is the photo may look like they're 4 distinctive focus areas, but just like our community, they will interlink and interweave with each other. So the first one is our increased equity focus area. So we want to support initiatives that create, that address the intergenerational inequity for our communities. The priority communities here are our Pacific and Māori peoples and our Northland and South Auckland communities, as well as initiatives that place children and young people at the centre. What we want to see here is communities leading their own solution to achieve their hopes and dreams. And this can include initiatives that want to ensure that culture and languages are thriving, and that tangata whenua are at the centre and partners in decision making. And you'll see I use the word intergenerational change here, which is the key word. And I guess an indicator for us when we are looking at application is who are the organisations working with. What we know is if we are trying to achieve or address intergenerational change, that this cannot be done alone. So it needs to be a collective and collaborative effort. Our social inclusion focus area prioritises our former refugees, new migrants, rainbow communities, people living with disabilities. And we want to create a greater sense of belonging and advocate for more inclusive laws, systems change, and prioritise communities with lived experience. Much like the increased equity focus area, when we are tackling the root causes of discrimination, racism, and stigma, we want to see meaningful participation and collaboration between organisations and actually see those with lived experience empowered and their voices lifted up. Our regenerative environment focus area prioritises the initiatives proposed by Tangata Whenua. So we want to understand or see initiatives that really support a deeper understanding between people and te taio, which is the environment. So we would support initiatives that are joined up to conserve and restore our environment for the futures to come. In this, indicators of actually showing initiatives that show that they've got a deeper understanding between people and the environment is we support initiatives that show that mataranga Māori, which is the Indigenous practices and approaches are being implemented and recognised, and kaitiaki behaviours embedded to create this greater sense of connection between people and the environment. And much like the other two focus areas, we take a long-term view when we're thinking about restoring and conserving our environment. So we would like to see intergenerational leadership being supported in this focus area. And last but not least, Foundation North recognises that the importance of communities coming together, the importance of services that ensure that our people or community are resilient, and that we want to keep increasing and learning new skills as we go. So initiatives that show that they're community-led and they are increasing access for people to participate in the wider community are supported through community support. I'm just going to go through a few application tips for you, and I feel this slide does have similarities to Michael when he presented the funders agreement. The first one is in bold, is to understand funders' strategic goals. So each funders will have different strategic goals and different focus areas or outcomes and priorities. Take your time to understand them and understand how your initiative fits and how they fit into these strategic goals. When you think about your application, think about the who. So who will benefit? Who are you working with? Who are you targeting? When are you, if it's a program or a project or an event, when is it going to occur? And does this fit in with the funders' timeline to when you will get a decision? What do you want funding for? This could be you telling a little bit about your story, and it should also be quite literal. What do you want funding for? Is it salaries? Is it equipment? Is it venue hire? We would like to know that as well. The why. Why is the initiative important? And why are you guys putting the initiative together? And how are you achieving your why? With Foundation North, we use an online system called Flux, and all the applications go through that system. And within each question, you'll see there's little question marks, which is helper text. I would encourage you guys to just hover over it to ensure that you guys are understanding what each question is asking, so you guys can provide a strong answer to those questions. And part of the application process, we also ask for supporting documents. When you do double check it, please just make sure that they align to the application. So the budget amount should align to the amount that you're applying in the application. The dates that you provide should be the same as the dates that you supply to us in the application. Just double checking those details would really be helpful to us, and be realistic. Unfortunately, Foundation North, not really unfortunately, we do receive over 800 applications a year, and it is unfortunate that we may not be able to fully fund or just partially fund some initiatives. So this is an opportunity for you to think about who else can you work with? Who can you collaborate with? Is there any other people that can bring strength to your initiative? Is this an opportunity to reach out to other funders to diversify your funding streams so that your initiative can go ahead and still have the same impact? And lastly, our team is here to help you. On our website, you will find our phone number and email address. Feel free to just contact us, and even on Facebook, we're here for you and we want to support you. For those that like doing a bit of research before they apply, On our website, we do have a whole lot of application guides that will support you from the get-go, from when you're thinking about applying for a grant to using the funding hub. We've even got a section to tell you guys a little bit about how we assess and what we look for in an application that could be really useful. And last but not least, I just want to do a little bit of recap. I feel like I've talked a lot. So Foundation North, we are a funder. Our rohi is Auckland and Northland. Our 4 focus areas are increased equity, social inclusion, regenerative environment, community support. I would encourage you guys to look on our website to ensure that you're eligible, what you're applying for is ineligible, and to understand our focus areas. And to contact us if you have any questions. And last but not least, this is very true, that behind every grant there is a story, and we would love to know your story as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Connie. That was great. Foundation North has certainly made a huge difference to thousands of lives, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Any questions for Connie or any of our speakers? Just remember, it's the Q&A box. So we're halfway through, so we're just going to stop for a second and take another poll. Okay. So this one's asking you, how many applications do you submit? So take a moment to answer. There's less than 10 a year, less than 20, maybe you do over 40 applications a year. Okay, I think we've got just about everybody. It's interesting that I think we've great. There's a couple more coming through. Thank you. We'll end that, and I'll show you the results. Just think that the majority are less than 10 applications a year. There are many funders than that. So hopefully those 10 are meeting your funding requirements. If they aren't and you're still looking for funding, there are a myriad of funders that you are missing out on if you're only applying to less than 10 a year. Okay, so our next speaker is for Match. Owain is the project manager for Match, and that might be a funder you might not have heard a lot about. So welcome, tell us about Match.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Stephanie. And yeah, thanks to the other speakers beforehand. Super interesting to see the different initiatives happening. And also thank you to the participants for joining us today. So ko waio, no wera, no ingarangi, o ku tūpuna I tupuaki o ki te Waipounamu, Tātaki o Tautahi Christchurch, e noho ana o ki te Whanganui Atara Wellington, in Aine. Ko Kimberin te moanga, ko Rakuhuri te awa, ko Owen toko ingoa. So thank you for having me. And as Stephanie mentioned, I'm the manager of Match Te Puna Taurite, and I'd love to share a little presentation with you now. So Match Te Puna Taurite is a new service that's soon to launch, and it's all about helping fund seekers and funders connect with each other. So I'll run through some basic details in this presentation. So first of all, I'd like to introduce our team and how this came about. So as mentioned, I'm the Match manager. I came on board with Philanthropy New Zealand in August last year to help run this initiative. And this is the team involved in the project. We've also got the wonderful Sue McCabe, who's the CEO at Philanthropy New Zealand. This has been her idea from the get-go, and she's been a significant driving force behind it and continues to provide great input into the project. We've got Lily McFarlane, and if you're a fund seeker in particular interacting with our service once we've launched, you might have something to do with her. She's on helping fund seekers have a good experience with the platform. And then we've got Nilo Stike. He's focused on the IT component of what we're doing, which I'll touch on more shortly. And a little bit more in terms of how I ended up in this position and why I'm passionate about what we're doing. Prior to this role, I was also a fund seeker. So I was involved in an environmental educational initiative called Squawk Squad. We ran environmental programs into schools around the country. And I was leading that project, that kaupapa, for about 3 years. And we had some great impact, but the whole way through, we really struggled to find that funding, which I know is quite a common experience, unfortunately, for a lot of amazing nonprofits such as yourselves. So following that, having to close down early last year, I was looking at how could I contribute to perhaps some different ways of supporting nonprofits to thrive in Aotearoa. So a little bit more around Match Te Puna Taurite itself. So our vision is for a more equitable, accessible and collaborative funding system. So there's 3 key words there which align with our key objectives, which I'll elaborate on a little here. So equity and funding distribution. So as I think Tim touched on briefly earlier, there was a stat that came out in 2020 that highlighted that 91% of philanthropic funding went to just 9% of charitable organisations in New Zealand. So obviously there's an imbalance there between the majority of funding going to the minority of often well-established and larger charities. Some of that is justifiable in terms of they've got bigger operations and are better set up to take on that money. But I think the overall takeaway from stats like that and experiences that many fund seekers have is that it's just too hard to find that reliable funding for your projects. So that's one of the things we're hoping to contribute to correcting. The second key objective there is access. So access to the funding system for a broad range of fund seekers. So again, this was a personal experience that I went through, but one I know is felt by many out there in terms of, especially when you're just starting out, not knowing where to ask for funding, not knowing who to turn to. Once you do start finding out about the different avenues, it can be quite overwhelming because you've got a lot of different options out there to apply to things like grant rounds and keeping track of those things. So again, we're hoping to try and simplify that process somewhat through this initiative. The third point is collaboration. So this speaks primarily to funders. So we're going to have 2 primary users of the service. It's fund seekers and funders. This collaboration piece is all about trying to get funders to talk to each other in better ways and more collaborative ways to result in better funding outcomes for charities around the country. And we know that a lot of funders are really keen to make changes for the better, which is really positive to see. So a little bit more around the details. I'll speak to a number of these points, so don't worry about needing to read all of them. But what is Match Te Puna Taurite at a base level? It's a service which is primarily consisting of an online platform, and that is to facilitate effective connection between those that need money and those that have money. So what that looks like is if you're a fund seeker, you can upload your funding needs to this platform. You will show what areas they fit into, for instance, what regions or what beneficiaries, what sector, that kind of thing. And on the flip side of that, then funders can come onto the platform and browse for all of the uploaded needs from those fund seekers. So that means a few things for fund seekers. It's a place where you can upload funding requests and have the chance of being seen by multiple funders at once. So we know that there's a lot of administration time that can be felt if you're having to try and apply separately to lots of different funders. So we're hoping to help decrease the reliance on applying to many funders through what we're doing. You can upload your funding needs in a way that suits you. So that could be previous applications that you've already written that could be uploaded. It could be specific project needs, or it could be as broad as, hey, we need X amount for a year's operation for this charity. And these are the basic details about what we do. You'll also be able to upload things like video footage, if that's preferable to written content. The third point there is, through this initiative, we're hoping to strengthen fund seeker voice. So we know that many fund seekers have some great feedback that they'd like to give to funders. And so we're looking to collect that in and provide that back in constructive ways to funders who we know are really open to receiving that feedback. On the other side of this, we've got funders. So as mentioned, they can log into this platform and get an overview of the different funding needs and fund seekers that are using the platform as categorized by the different funding areas they might be interested in. Once they find these fund seekers that they're interested to understand more about, they can either click into their profiles to read what they've uploaded there, or click through to any websites and other content they might have uploaded. But ultimately they can initiate a connection with the fund seeker. So we're hoping through this way, funders can be proactive in reaching out to fund seekers to support them, at least to continue that conversation as to whether they might be suitable or not for funding. The third point there is that funders can collaborate with other funders. So we're looking at ways of, for starters, other funders can search for other funding, for other funders' profiles, giving some funders greater visibility over who else might be funding areas that they're also interested in. They can also then connect and continue collaborative conversations offline. And we'll also be looking to bring funders together around certain topics or forums, including in situations such as emergency responses. How can we bring funders together in a structured way to best support different emergencies as they occur, be that things like Whakaari, White Island, or Christchurch earthquake, that kind of thing. Point down the bottom there is that the service has tiered fees. The good news there is that for tier 4 charities, it's free, which is the majority of charities in New Zealand. So a few things that Match Te Puna Taurite isn't. So I also want to be as clear as possible about this. So it's not a guaranteed place to acquire funding. So ultimately, this is another way that you can apply in a form for funding. But it's not guaranteed that just by having a profile live on Match or having funding requests active that you're guaranteed funding as a result of that effort that you've put in. Ultimately, it's still up to those funders to decide whether you're a good fit for what they're doing or whether perhaps not. It's not a place for non-registered charities to acquire funding. So for the most part, the service that we're offering is for legally registered charities only. And the reasons for that are there are other ways for non-registered charities to acquire funding that we don't want to duplicate, things like Give a Little. And also from our end, we need to ensure that we've got some sort of level of verification for funders so that they can be confident in the fund seeking requests that are uploaded. As you might see, there's a little asterisk there that says we are aware that does exclude a lot of great nonprofits. My previous nonprofit wasn't a registered charity, but so to help with that, we're running a pilot currently with some of the key focus groups that typically receive disadvantaged funding outcomes. So it's not a place where fund seekers will be able to initiate connection to funders. So as mentioned, funders are the ones that will initiate connection with fund seekers. Reasons for that, again, is that there are other places where fund seekers can search for different funders or apply to grant rounds from different funders. But also the fact that for funders to want to use this, we don't want to overwhelm them with the potential comms that they might receive if we allowed connection the other way as well. And also, yeah, just want to give a big shout out to the many other organizations, some of which we've heard on already on this talk today, that are also offering great fund seeker support. So encourage you to check some of those out. We'll also, once we go live, we'll list a few of the ones that we know about. And we've designed Match Te Puna Taurite to fit into a niche that's not currently being catered for. Yeah, just want to be upfront with user fees to be clear on that stuff. So it depends on what category of funder you might be, which is based on your annual distribution amount. And then for fund seekers, it's based on your charitable tier. So you can see some of the prices there. There's 20% discount if you sign up in April or May once we go live. So that's a good reason to be part of this early on, and free for tier 4 charities, as I mentioned. I want to give a big shout out to some of these amazing funders that have backed this project. So I think it's interesting to note that this is an initiative initiated by funders. So often fund seekers, we know, have some feedback that they want to give funders that's not always positive, but also know that funders are making some great efforts to change the dynamic and change the conversation as to how we can better support charities around the country. And these are some examples of some of those amazing funders that have come on board to support Match. So we're really proud to have them alongside us. There's some of the bigger names in philanthropy in New Zealand, which is great. And as this is an initiative of Philanthropy New Zealand, which is a peak body for that sector, we have a lot of good connections, which has been great in terms of helping to build momentum and get early interest for when we go live, which is happening shortly. So final slide here is, yeah, we're launching very shortly. So the website will be live from the 28th of March, so a couple of weeks or less than. This will be a staggered launch, so the full functionality won't be available to most funders and fund seekers until what we expect will be mid-April. But from the 28th of March, you'll be able to jump on and get a bit of a feel for what we're doing. And there's ways that you can stay in the loop, such as signing up with our newsletter. We've got some contact details there. We're also looking to spread the word as much as possible at the moment about this initiative. The more fund seekers or more funders that we get on the platform, the better representative, the more representative of the funding need and the funding availability the site will show. So both from a personal perspective, in terms of you might be interested yourselves, but if you would like to share the word around what's happening here, that will help the service as well. And if you need any help with that, please just be in touch. But otherwise, we've got Facebook and LinkedIn, and yeah, always happy to help answer any questions that you might have. I think we've got a time for questions at the end of this hui, so welcome those, but also welcome them beyond as well. Ngā mihi. Thank you.
Thanks, Owen. And an opportunity for organisations to showcase funding needs to funders is always welcome. Again, as you said, any questions, please use the Q&A box. Our next speaker is from Perpetual Guardian. Kirsten is the manager of the Perpetual Guardian Foundation, and she'll be sharing with us the funding opportunities they have available and how to access them. Welcome, Kirsten.
Kia ora, thank you, Stephanie. Kia ora tātou, everybody. Ko Kirsten tuku ingoa. My name is Kirsten. I've been with Perpetual Guardian I've just come through 10 years. I can't believe it. Full disclosure, I'm sitting in a very messy teenager's bedroom at the table they do their homework on, just keeping it real in these unusual times that we're in. Thank you for having me, Stephanie, Simon and crew, and lovely to hear from my fellow funders as well. So a little bit about Perpetual Guardian's funding opportunities. It'll probably be important to understand Perpetual Guardian as an organisation in the first instance. So in 2014, Perpetual Trust and Guardian Trust merged to create what is now known as Perpetual Guardian. Those two companies had around 135 years of experience. We've got 17 branches around New Zealand, and we've got around 270 staff. Traditionally, we focused on fiduciary services, interesting word that. So we write things like wills, family trusts, charitable trusts, and we do some agency work as well. A consequence of that work has been becoming one of the largest trustees or professional trustees for charitable trusts in New Zealand. So we have around 500 to 600 charitable entities under management. So those are like independent foundations that steward the private wishes of individuals who entrusted us to look after their funds. We grant between $40 and $50 million a year, and that's from a funding pool of around $750 million in funds under management. It is a lot, and it sounds a lot, but something that's really specific about the funds that we steward is that a much smaller proportion of those left us with discretion. So discretion in terms of foresight, on the understanding that when they pass away, the needs of our community might be a little bit different in, say, 100 years' time, when, if managed carefully, their fund could still exist. So the majority of our funding goes directly through to organisations that were chosen by the people whose charitable intent we manage. And then there's a much smaller portion which we take applications for and contestable funding, if you like. So inside of that, in 2014, we also established the Perpetual Guardian Foundation. The foundation was designed to sit alongside of that traditional portfolio of charitable intent and pick up on some of that everyday philanthropy, people who maybe didn't have the millions, billions, trillions to create a really meaningful independent fund. Those that had perhaps a little bit less, who wanted to become a part of a community of donors who had a shared purpose, whether that was as specifically as both loving the SPCA or whether that was more broad in terms of all loving the environment and becoming a collective that funds in that realm. And then in 2020, Give a Little came in under the umbrella of Perpetual Guardian Group. So I'll talk a little bit more about that specifically as we go along. So that smaller group of private legacies that we steward on behalf of donors, many of whom are no longer with us, they're advertised on our website. This is the link to our website, and I understand that all of these slides will be being distributed to you, so you will soon have this in your email inbox. So what we try and do is we try and keep an application schedule up live there for you to use strategically and match back to the work that you are doing at the coalface. So in here, you'll find the average date or month and time of year that this fund, a specific fund, will grant, who they tend to favour, and that does tend to be registered charitable organisations, but in some instances it's individuals as well in terms of scholarships. The area that they most likely give to as a priority, and the sector that is their priority sector. Then we provide a little bit of an objective or a little bit of a strategy, and that is very heavily derived from the wishes that that individual left for us that we're trying to bring to the sector and match out to work that is being undertaken by the likes of yourselves on this call. So we recommend that you bookmark, especially in these times, this page, and you check back on it regularly. And I suppose more ordinary times, this was a fairly static and rotating schedule that could be a little more definitive. But in this place and time, things do ebb and flow a little bit more, whether someone doesn't have quite as much income available for grant making in a particular year and chooses to accumulate and come back next year with more funding to give, or whether distribution strategies and objectives slightly change. It's really important that you keep an eye on this, have a look at it against the strategic priorities of your organisation and see where there are some really nice link ups. Just to let everybody know, we've recently moved our online application portal to Flux. otherwise known now as the Perpetual Guardian Funding Hub. We understand that many other organisations within New Zealand utilise this grants management software, including Foundation North, I believe, Connie, and many of the community trusts. So hopefully there's a sense of familiarity for those that are already out there and submitting applications on the regular. And for those that aren't, the baseline of the system is that you create a registration for your organisation, and then as a representative of your organisation, you submit applications to the funds that we have on offer. There's a mirror advertising on the Perpetual Guardian Funding Hub, as there is on our website. Because it's brand new, we're only registering people as and when they have a fund that they are applying for, just to ensure that we're not inundated at any given time with registrations, and we can kind of spread them out over the year. So if there is something that you think, bingo, it's a match for what we do, I'm going to apply, head on over to this, our funding hub, and you'll see down in the lower right hand side of the screen, there's a section to create your account. That creates your registration with the portal, and once you're all set up and registered, usually a 24-hour process, you can go ahead and start submitting applications to the funds that are currently open in our arena. Just some really key points that we find are commonly overlooked by applicants, but we feel are so fundamental to our ability to help match you to funding and move you through to a more successful application process. Up front in our applications, there's a really specific funding guideline. That's where we really put the individual who brought this funding opportunity to the market is held on a pedestal. We talk about where they came from, what they were passionate about, you know, that wonderful person who may or may not be with us any longer, whose heart's intentions we're really trying to hold up front. Make sure that your ask is right up front of your application. Sometimes I can read an entire application and I get to the end and I think, I don't know what you want. So we want to prevent that happening and just have it really explicitly right up front. It is true to say that professional trustee companies show a preference for project work over operational costs, although this is something I've been trying to change for quite some time within the organisation. And there are some of our funds more than others that still, that are now comfortable funding operational costs. The reason for the preference to projects is really around prudence. So what we really try and have is something that we know that this person can give to and kind of have a really considerable impact on. It's not that we won't fund operational costs within that project, absolutely, because we understand that they can't be undertaken without the people who sit in behind them. So it's just in the way that you frame your ask and making sure that it's more project-based than operational cost-based. And obviously, it's just really important to distinguish between wants and needs. Sometimes something as simple as that can have us splitting hairs between applications. And make sure, even if they're guesstimates, you articulate some of the outcomes. So what do you think is going to happen as a consequence of this funding? And we find 9 times out of 10, even when we do really formal evaluation processes, what is your gut feel is true to what comes out of our formal application evaluation process and some. So please feel free to trust those outcomes. So we've just got 5 minutes to go, and I thought I would talk to you a little bit about Give a Little. These slides are a little bit outdated now. I think we did this at the end of last year, and this is constantly changing. So wonderful Give a Little. that stewards funds for charities and also for private asks, as I'm sure you will all be aware. We empower the donors. They get to choose who they give the money to. But it's 11 years old, Give a Little. There are almost 4,000 registered charities currently on Give a Little, and we'd encourage anyone who's looking to crowdfund money to have at least a baseline page for their organisation. You can have numerous pages, a baseline for your organisation, and project-based asks, so it's like a little octopus of funding networks. We've just hit the 200 million in all-time donations. So in 6 months since this was written, we've gone from 150, 250 to 200 million. So that's a pretty incredible milestone. And we find with, the million odd unique hits we get to that website every year, it's really a matter of being in to win, having your profile up on the page and taking advantage of that really unique set of donors who look to Give a Little as their primary giving portal. I just, as a last thing, would like to draw your attention to the Charities Hub. Since being under the umbrella of Perpetual Guardian, a lot of work has been done in regards to charities specifically, being able to leverage the richness that Give a Little can bring to their fundraising strategy. Tim mentioned earlier the funding network and the generosity generator working in partnership. There are really unique little ways to work, match funding campaigns, events, and all sorts of other odds and ends. And lastly, tax gift. A really neat little scenario with Give a Little is that individual givers can opt to pay it forward, in that when I make a $20 donation to someone on Give a Little, I always select pay it forward. And what this enables is the Give a Little and tax gift to pick up the 33% tax rebate and pay it forward back to that organisation. So a really neat little 3 ticks kind of scenario. Give, offset the fees, and pay it forward in your tax gift. I never claimed my 33% tax back at tax time anyway, so I thought what a neat way to continually pay it forward. So that, in a nutshell, is the Perpetual Guardian portion of giving, including the Perpetual Guardian Foundation, and a little bit about the crowdfunding scheme that is Give a Little, powered by Perpetual Guardian. Really look forward to answering your questions in a little bit, and just thank you again for having me and listening to me chat today.
Thanks, Kirsten. Delighted that you could join us today, and the pay it forward tax gift sounds perfect. Great innovation. Again, as Kirsten said, any questions for her, please put in the Q&A box. We'll get to those shortly. So down to our last speaker, lucky last, the last speaker for today is Pedram from the Department of Internal Affairs, which is another key funder for many of us. Welcome, Pedram.
Kia ora, everyone, and thank you, Stephanie and Simon, for putting this together. First, my apologies for being late. I have shared my screen. Can you see my screen? Yes, good. So being the last one, I will be quite brief, as most of you are familiar with the lottery fund. So at the Department of Internal Affairs, we administer a range of 28 different funds. These funds are all available on this page. It's called communitymatters.govt.nz. These funds, as you can see, are for organizations as well as different individuals. The 2 funds that are most popular are the Community Organization Grant Scheme, which has 2 rounds every year. This fund, you can access up to $5,000 for small initiatives in the community. And the other one is the Lottery Community, which is around $400 million annually. when you visit this website, you will see, the priorities indicated for each of the funds available. So what we fund and what we don't fund. And as with most other donors, we also use the flux system. So lottery community, obviously, for organizations, one of the main categories is for them to be charities and social service focused. The focus mainly is for Maori whānau, Hapu, and Iwi. Of course, Pacific people and other ethnic communities, as well as other women, other people, women, youth, and people with disabilities. Lottery community dates. Also, again, this fund is open twice a year. It opens in June, closes in July, and round 2 opens in October and ends in December. It takes around 6 months actually from the time that you submit your application till the time that you receive the grants. I guess just to make this whole complicated system really easier, I've put the questions that you will be asked in a very simple format, the questions that we're concerned with. And, this system is actually in the process of being changed because it's quite complicated. We find that a lot of do-gooders in the community have a challenging time actually logging into the system and filling up the applications, answering all these questions. So over the years, the system has become more and more simplified, and it is yet to be more simplified in the next year or two. This has taken quite some time, but consultations are being made in the process. So in short, when you are actually thinking about submitting an application, these are the questions that will be posed. What you want funding for, what community need do you propose to meet, how you will address the need, what are the expected benefits, outcomes. This outcomes category is very important for us because it's basically what you will also report to the department about. It helps if you are very concise and very short. Do not go over a paragraph or two. Bullet points are preferred. And other factors to actually really keep in mind is making sure that you do consult with the community before you submit your project, that it's more of a community-driven proposal, a project, and outcomes that have been put together collectively. And of course, it is critical to consult with your local Hapu and Iwi. Now, finally, I just want to end by highlighting the tripod really of our outlook into funding, which is to promote, connection, which is a priority for the department, as well as be collaboration amongst partners. There is a lot of good actors in the community that are working on the same projects. It would be just great to bring them actually together. Reach out, if you are intending to reach a certain outcome, do look to see who else is working on that project or trying to reach those outcomes and partner with them. So number 1 was connection. Number 2 is collaboration, and number 3 is well-being. given the challenges that we've had in the last 2 years and in general, you know, and well-being has multiple dimensions, but mainly, you know, mental well-being, environmental and physical well-being. So we tend to prioritize projects that actually target to reach those outcomes. Kia ora.
Thanks, Pedram. Appreciate that. I know how important COGS funding and lottery funding are to many organisations, so thank you. Okay, so that comes to the end of our presentations today. So let's get to some of your questions. Don't forget, presenters, to unmute yourself before you answer. So Michael, the first one's for you. So how do we apply for a regional wide service?
Thank you, Stephanie. Hey, look, just before I do, I just want to acknowledge. I see that one of my colleagues, Deb Doyle, is the strategic broker for the Devon Port Takapuna local board, has dialed in, listening, and lovely. Thank you, Deb, for making the time. For that, I would highly recommend that that question, if we could take it offline, because like Bedram said, with big organizations, often they would get lost in trying to navigate their way through, but we try to keep things simple as well as DIA. So if they emailed myself offline, I will happy to navigate them. It's quicker than the long novel that I would give you this morning.
Okay, thank you. So maybe you can answer another one just for you. Where do people find out who their local strategic broker is?
God, I only just wanted to get to celebrate St. Paddy's, and I've ended up with 2 questions in a row. If they would email the local, if they go into the Auckland Council and identify the local board where they live, the local board, if they email the information email address that's in that local board page, they would be able either to help, or if they send it through yourself and Simon, then I'm able to connect them to the 20 or the 21 strategic broker across Auckland. I see that one of the questions is asked about Rodney local board. So the lovely lady up there, our broker up there, is Sue Dodds, but certainly, once again, email it through yourself and Simon, and happy to connect them to all our brokers across Auckland.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Connie, one for you. Can organisations apply for both community and impact funding as separate applications?
No, unfortunately not. So the impact fund, so you can only apply for a grant. No, sorry, so you can only receive a grant once every 12 months, regardless of the funding streams. With the impact funding, it's if you feel like your next project falls into this impact funding space, I would encourage you guys to get hold of us and we can discuss the project and where it fits best in the funding streams.
Thank you. So just following on from that, another question was, if an organisation has multi-year grants, can they also apply for a quick response grant for a new initiative?
No, unfortunately, if you've received a multi-year grant, you're kind of locked in for those 4 years. But if you know, things are always changing within organisations, so if there is a need to do a change of purpose, or there's something else that comes up and you didn't originally apply for it, you can always apply to us for a change of purpose or an extension of time. We're quite flexible in that sense of how you use the funding.
Thank you. Anyway, we are a tier 3 charity, but our income is less than 100k. Would you waive the fee for us? Well, that's from Dawn.
Kia ora, kia ora. I did see that. Thank you, Dawn. And apologies, my computer just broke, so I had to. I'm on a cell phone now. So you might see some of my bedroom behind me.
Yes.
What's that, Steph?
I was just saying, I hope you made your bed. If you're saying,
of course.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So in terms of the categories of fees, like we do need to, I guess, be clear on yeah, there will be user fees for tier 3, tier 1, and tier 2 charities. We hope that they're affordable enough to be worth the investment.
and it's based on annual expense amount. So it depends kind of, yeah, what your annual expenses would be.
Thank you. Tim, one for you, and I appreciate you've answered online, but just to make sure everybody has seen that. The question was just clarifying that it's not for charities that are also incorporated societies.
You're a registered charity, you're in. It's just if you're only an incorporated society, we would struggle to give that support, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Connie, does social inclusion include the elderly who suffer from isolation?
Yeah, thanks for that. I saw the question and I've been pondering about it. I think we can take this one offline. It's just quite nuanced. Like, is it that your project is contributing to community resilience for these older people, or are you working with older people in the migrant community? So I would love to understand a little bit more before giving you some guidance with that.
Thank you. Owen, will Match primarily attract organisational funders, or will also aim to attract individuals as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. The initial focus is mostly on those organisational funders, because those are the ones that we have the most visibility or knowledge of who's out there, and that's through the networks that we have at Philanthropy New Zealand. But we do hope to attract some additional philanthropists, maybe high net worth individuals, and other individuals that may not have perhaps considered philanthropy before. So yeah, I guess that's going to be a working progress thing for us.
Thank you. I'm just checking to see if there are any other questions. Michael, there's a request for your email address, so we'll make sure that that's in your slides, and so that we can send that out and get. Is that good?
Oh, so preferably if they just call 111, they might get me there. Yeah, we'll take it offline. No problem. But we'll talk about how we navigate and answer, respond to our communities to make sure they're connected to the right colleagues and the right office across Auckland as a big city. No problem. Thank you.
And then look at whether it's a regional service and applying to local boards, etc. So we'll make sure. So Cheryl will make sure that Michael's email address is there for you, so that you'll be able to contact him direct.
Thank you, Stephanie. In case someone's used and abused my name out there trying to get into the rugby at Eden Park.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think I've answered every question. I've said every question. So
there's a few in the answer that I think the group might be quite interested in. For example, the question about funding for limited liability companies. Connie mentioned funding for companies, and I responded saying Perpetual Guardian similar, in that we may fund a limited liability company. It's more relevant in the context of a social enterprise type model. But what we do, and I imagine it's the same for Foundation North, Connie, you can jump in, is that if a company under their company umbrella is undertaking a purely philanthropic project, then we would be funding just that philanthropic piece, so not their for-profit business side of things. That it's rare, but it does happen on occasion. So that's at Perpetual Guardian. Connie, is that the same for you?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. So we would look at the public benefit versus the pecuniary gains.
Same.
Yeah, so that's what we would look at. And I think if you feel like you do fit into that category of having a charitable initiative, it's worth having a chat with us to explore that a little bit further to ensure that it does align to what we mean as public benefit.
Absolutely. One of the other questions that people might be quite interested in there is, if your application is declined, do you give feedback? So at Perpetual Guardian, we get around 4,000 applications every year. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to provide itemised feedback. on applications. We'd love to, but our little wee team just doesn't have capacity at that kind of volume. Where we would potentially have occasion to provide feedback is if you're engaged in one of our high kind of engagement application models. In that case, if you were shortlisted to one of 3 and you'd been going through quite a rigorous interview process, we would set aside the time to give you some feedback as to why others were picked. But as a rule of thumb, no, we don't, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Kirsten. Others, Pedram, do you give feedback if an application is declined?
Yes, actually. And interestingly enough, to the department, rejection does not actually mean no in the long term. Our roles as advisors is to get back to the applicant, to review their application, to learn about those very questions that I shared, to help them tweak their application, to improve the application. That's exactly what we do. And there's 12 of us. So, you know, when an applicant is rejected, we get back to them, we explain, and we work with them towards the next round. Kia ora.
Thank you. Connie, does Foundation North provide feedback for applications that are declined?
We are open to it. So there is a phone number at the bottom of the decision letter. Any questions, any feedback, give us a call. We are primarily funders, but when we do work with applicants, we want to play that role in brokering relationships or helping them to achieve their bigger vision. So more the capacity, capability support as well. So we're definitely open to feedback or providing the feedback to groups who's been declined or didn't get the full funding that they would have applied for.
Thank you. Michael, does the council give feedback to organisations whose applications are declined?
No, I was just wanted to give a different answer to all of you. Hey, look, in the 21st century, Stephanie, I think it's a no-brainer for all of us as community servants, organisations that we sit down and support and help these community groups, because not everybody are good at filling out these funding applications. And like Pedram said, the council is similar. Our system often poses lots and lots of challenges as well for our small community groups that are trying to apply for some small funding to apply on their initiative for community. So absolutely, look, we're open like all of the funders that are present here this morning, just to find that right person that connects and support you in your funding applications, and we'll connect you to the bigger accounting team that deals with it and make sure that they are receiving the right responses and filling out the right boxes, using the right language and the right tone and all of that stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to be finishing ahead of schedule. I think I've covered all the questions. So as we come to the end of today's funding fair, I'd like to ask Fiona, the General Manager of ANCAD, to say a few words.
Well, first of all, everyone, thank you so much for these amazing presentations. Michael, Tim, Connie, Owen, Kirsten, and Pedram. It's been really inspiring for us this morning. I think that we've all understood a little bit better how important it is to align our organization's strategic goals and to understand the strategic goals of our funders so that we can work collaboratively together. I think all of our speakers this morning raised some really interesting points around exploring the who, when, what, why, and how of what it is we're trying to accomplish, and really focusing on the articulation of our outcomes and what it is we're trying to achieve in the community, and taking that time to consult with community. I think there were just some really great gems that came out of those presentations. One thing I would like to say is how warm, friendly, and accessible you all make the funding process for us. The great systems and processes that you're putting in place, things like Flux, the time that you're prepared to spend with community to work out how can we accomplish our goals. and the advice that you give us from your experience of how we can actually increase the impact that we're having in our community. I loved the quote from Connie, behind every grant there is a story. This opportunity we have to tell our stories, but also tell the story of working together with funders, community and funders working together to have greater impact in our cities and in our towns around Aotearoa and across the Auckland region. I just want to say a huge thank you to you all for your time, and thank you to everyone who joined us. It was really inspiring to see the breadth of organisations and people who joined us from across Aotearoa and the Auckland region. I do hope you'll continue to connect with us, and please do feedback to us anything that you would like to see from ANCAD in the future in regard to our funding fair or other initiatives. We really hope we can continue this conversation, and I really hope to connect with our wonderful, inspiring speakers this morning. Thank you so much for giving of your time. And finally, I just really want to acknowledge Simon and Stephanie, who put a lot of work into just organising and coordinating the funding fair. We're so grateful for that. So thank you, as always, with the rest of our ANCAD team. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes unsung, as with all of our organisations. So wishing you all well for the rest of the day, and hoping this has been a really valuable experience, and that we all have an opportunity to connect and meet outside of this wonderful funding fair. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Fiona. So just a reminder to everyone that the speakers' presentations will be emailed. Don't forget to order your copy of the 2022 funding directory via the ANCAD website, and to check out the other training opportunities that ANCAD offers via the lift.nz website. So hopefully, if we've done this right, there should be a quick survey that will appear at the end of the webinar, just 2 questions. We really appreciate you taking the time to answer those questions and to provide feedback. Thank you to all our speakers today. We really, really appreciate you giving your time, sharing your knowledge and experience. And thank you to all the attendees. I appreciate some have had to leave as the day does go on. So thank you to you. Look forward to seeing you in person at next year's funding fair. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.